Okay, this is the 25th edition of the Positive Postman's podcast. And the 25th episode, in my opinion, is a very special episode. All of them are special, but it's something a little additionally special about this one. And I'm gonna give you a little backstory on this guy that we have to my left. He was born and raised in Stop 6 until he was 10 years old. He moved from Stop 6 to Como as a child. He graduated with a BA from Texas Wesleyan. He went on to become a rep of the state of Texas in 2005. He then became a U.S. House of Representatives member in 2012.
Yep, that's right.
And he is currently on the Energy Committee and the Health Committee.
Energy and Commerce
Energy and Commerce Committee.
Yeah, which includes healthcare.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Now, in my book, he is a Stop 6 success story. And I want to welcome him to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Marc Veasey.
Yeah, hey, absolutely, man. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Good to see you. Good to see you today. Yeah. No, I spent so much of my childhood here. Was born in Como, but when not born in Como, but that's where we lived when I first was born. But then we lived over here until my parents got divorced until I was 10. My grandmother lived right over here off of Rickenbacker and Lucas.
Yeah.
And then when I was in 4th grade, moved back to Como in my grandparents' house. And went to South High Mount Elementary, then went to Monig, and then finished from Arlington Heights High School. So I'm Fort Worth all the way, and my roots truly are, and my upbringing is truly centered here in Stop 6 in Como.
Yeah. What is being from Stop, spending a significant part of your life in Stop 6? What does Stop 6 mean to you?
Yeah, no, Stop 6 mean a lot to me. Just being right here, y'all may be able to hear the drums in the background. They're having the Dunbar homecoming parade, but I remember just so many amazing memories. I remember one of my uncles had been a Dunbar football star, and I remember he used to come over here, park his truck, and watch the guys practice before they have this nice field out here. And just spending time with him, watching those guys, that was a big deal to him, to sit in his truck and just watch the guys practice. Going out to the lake, learning how to fish. My grandmother's all her cane poles that she had brought up from Marshall, going out there, probably spending too much time out there when I was a youngster. But just because of some other things that were going on, sometimes we'd be out there way too late. Not with my grandmother, but sometimes we'd be out there way too late. But yeah, no, it brings back just amazing memories. Amazing memories. I learned a lot of lessons here. Met so many great people that really molded me into who I am today. And then learned a lot of lessons from a lot of tragedies too, from people that I grew up with over here. Yeah.
Now, we are adjacent to Fort Worth Dunbar High School.
We are, yep.
And
just
that
east.
was the home of the legendary Coach Robert
Oh
Hughes.
my God, yeah.
Now, Google said that you were an advocate to continuing the legacy of Coach Robert Hughes.
Absolutely.
What does it tell the people what that means?
Yeah, one of the things that I did when Coach Hughes passed away, because I consider Coach Hughes a friend of mine. I would, like a lot of people, I would see him out and about. I live in Woodhaven. He lived in Woodhaven. I'd see him at Albertsons. Would sometimes see him at Dixie House eating. And we would stop and chat with one another. And just his commitment, even after he left high school basketball and retired, and you'd see him walking, he loved to walk. His commitment to health and maintaining himself. He was just really I think one of the most significant role models that the city of Fort Worth, regardless of race, regardless of white, black, Hispanic, Asian, I think that he is one of the most significant role models on how a man should carry himself, because of the way that Coach Hughes always carried himself with distinction. The only time he needed to be the loudest person in the room was when he was coaching his boys at Dunbar High School. Other than that, his presence alone was so much in any room that he walked in. He immediately commanded respect.
That's true.
And he did not need to be the loudest person. He didn't need to be the most colorful person. When Coach Hughes walked into any room, he had automatic success. And I think that it's just a great story on so many different fronts for our young people and even for adult men on how to carry themselves. Coach Hughes was the model gentleman of the city of Fort Worth.
So when did you, what year was it when you first became acquainted with Dunbar High School basketball?
Oh my God. When I was a kid and when I would be over here with my grandmother, I wanted to play for Dunbar. I ended up playing for Heights, but I wanted to play for Dunbar when I was a kid. That was the guys that were on Dunbar's basketball team. And it's hard for people to understand it now just because the black community and what that phrase black community means is so different now. Black community could mean City of Arlington, Mansfield ISD. Black community could mean City of Fort Worth, Crowley ISD. Black community could mean somewhere in North Richland Hills. Like, black community does not mean what it meant when we were youngsters, right?
Yeah.
Black community in Fort Worth meant Stop 6, Como, North Side. There were some smaller communities in Grapevine and smaller community in Arlington, but for the most part, because of segregation, and even though we grew up during integration, we grew up really like right after segregation ended. And so because of that, most black people still lived in one of those 3 neighborhoods in Tarrant County for the most part. And for Dunbar basketball, if you had relatives in Stop 6 and you spent any time living in Stop 6, like they were celebrities, they were stars.
Yeah.
And they really were. They literally were like stars. It was like having the Los Angeles Lakers like in your backyard. And so for me, I learned to love Dunbar basketball at a really young age. And then and long after I stopped playing, I would always go to the Whataburger tournament and some of the other games just to watch it, just because Coach Hughes put on such an excellent product with the way that he coached his team.
Yeah. When he passed away, I saw you on the floor in Congress.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What were you doing? Explain to the people what were you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked me that because I love to explain this kind of inside basketball stuff. Inside I'm saying basketball now. I guess the real term is inside baseball, but I like to really share those type of things with people because it gives people a sense of like what we do in our role as members of Congress. So one of the privileges that we have as members of Congress is that we can do what are called 1-minute speeches.
Right.
And on the 1-minute speeches, you are allowed to talk about anything. There are certain rules you have to follow of decorum, but for the most part, you can talk about whatever you want to. And you get 1 minute. You can only do 1 speech a day.
Okay.
And you talk about whatever it is you want to. It could be a certain topic. It can be to honor someone that just died. It can be to honor someone that just had a big achievement. Or it could be to talk about, your dislike of Donald Trump's, big, ugly bill. It can be whatever you want to talk about, right? And so I said, I'm going to do a 1 minute on Coach Hughes. Just because Coach Hughes was obviously someone that played a significant portion in my life, indirectly mainly, by watching him, by sitting on a different bench than him, but by just watching him, the way he carried himself over the years. He was a huge influence on me. And I've even told my son, I was like, man, you really missed it. Like, it's not the same. We still have great athletes here. I don't want to put anybody down. We have great athletes all over Tarrant County and North Texas in both football, basketball, baseball, all sports. But back then it was really something special, and Coach Hughes was a big part of what made it special.
Yes, sir.
And I wanted to honor that for a lot of different reasons. The first thing is economically. When Coach Hughes was coaching Dunbar basketball, it didn't matter who they were playing. It didn't matter whether it was the Whataburger tournament or whether it was a district game against another, 5A, Fort Worth ISD school. Their seats were usually full.
Yes, sir.
They were usually full,
yes,
and that was a great time for Fort Worth ISD. Coach Hughes was a revenue generator for Fort Worth ISD and for the city of Fort Worth, and brought a lot of positive recognition to our city. And so he deserved that honor on the House floor with me talking about his accomplishments.
Yes,
And I really enjoyed it. I really got into it. I remember I stood up and opened up my jacket and pointed the way that Coach Hughes used to when someone would come down. You know, what was his name that used to shoot from far away means would come out and shoot and say if he made it, Coach Hughes would let him stay in. But if he missed, Coach Hughes would look down at that bench and be like, get him out of there. And I just love like everything about Coach Hughes and his style. And so I wanted to be sure that I honored him. And then just the way that he molded so many of those young men that worked for him, that he coached, that are now, you know, doing amazing things. You think about when he was at I Am Terrell, you think about James Cash, you know, who went on to have a very distinguished career at Harvard and was one of the co-owners of and a minority investor in the Boston Celtics. You know, he's had other people that have worked in various industries around the country and have gone on to achieve great things. He's mentored other coaches. There are other people that were his star players now that are coaching themselves in Fort Worth ISD and coaching elsewhere throughout the county and state and country. And of course, he was the most winningest coach.
Yes, sir.
Out of the four boys coaches that have 1,000 wins or more, he has the most. And so he should be honored for being one of only 4 coaches to ever get 1,000 wins or more.
And you did a lot of research.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have to do that much research because I lived it, right? Like I'm from Fort Worth. I went to all the games. I followed it closely, and I did do some research, but I really lived it. I went to the round robin game that they had when I think it was either held here in Fort Worth or it was held in Arlington. When it was Morgan Wooten, who was at DeMatha, Coach Hughes, of course, here at Dunbar. The guy down in Clear Lake, he's the only coach still living, Bob Kruger, who Bob Kruger's championship team that he coached, one of my former House colleagues, Pete Olson, played on that championship team that Bob Kruger coached. And then, of course, Tasker in Hobbs, New Mexico. I went to that game where they did that round robin where they had the 4 1,000 win coaches. And actually, like, you know, I had graduated from high school by then, but I went to the game and had a great time. And again, it was packed wall to wall. So, like I said, Coach Hughes is a revenue generator.
I think Clear Lake beat us in 1990 in state.
I don't remember. That may be right. I don't remember.
Either they won state.
Yeah.
And maybe we lost in the semifinals.
Yeah, that may be. I don't remember. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about Hughes House.
Yeah.
What role did you play in getting, you know, the construction and everything going?
Yeah. So as a member of Congress, and I'm glad you asked that question because it gives people the opportunity to see how everything kind of comes together.
Yes, sir.
So as a member of Congress, we really rely heavily on our local government to let us know where they need help.
Okay.
I don't necessarily come into the community and say, hey, here's what the city of Fort Worth needs to do. You don't want the federal government having that kind of overreach and that type of power. That's one of the reasons why people are upset about Donald Trump sending in the National Guard to Washington, D.C. and talking about sending them to Chicago and Memphis and all these other places, is that you don't want the federal government being like, hey, here's what you need to do, unless it's an emergency type situation, right, that really warrants that sort of use. And the Hughes House was a perfect example where Gina Bivens, who was the council person at that time, and City of Fort Worth came to me and said we needed help on housing. We want to reconstruct that area where Hughes House is sitting, and make it into newer, more updated, affordable housing in the Stop 6 area. Can you help us secure federal funding for that? And so they made the request to me, and then I, in turn, went to the federal government and put in requests for that funding and was able to receive it. But it's like a perfect example, and so many other things like that I try to do with the input of community help. One of the other things that I did when I was in the state legislature, for instance, and I was able to do this. But and it's a state. A lot of people don't realize this is a state road, the Rosedale.
Okay.
You may remember there used to be a ditch. It was there for years. There used to be a ditch with water that ran in the middle of it. I was in the state legislature, and I was like, instead of turning East Rosedale into a Texas Motor Speedway, because they wanted to drastically widen East Rosedale, I said, instead of turning it into Texas Motor Speedway, I said, why don't we get rid of that ditch in the middle and put some nice parking and signs and everything up and things like that, and keep the road narrow so it's more pedestrian friendly and it doesn't turn into a drag strip. It still is it's still pretty fast. People still speed up and down there, but that section between Stall Cups and 820, like, that was my idea, to get rid of that water ditch that had been in the center there. It's completely unnecessary. But before I did that and worked with TxDOT on getting that done, I talked with the city council at the time. I think it was Frank Moss that was the city council person during that time period, and worked directly with them to do that. And so you want to make sure that when you're putting in requests for monies, or that you are doing other things, that you have good local partners that want that help. I don't know if you know, I just got the YMCA reopened over here in East Fort Worth, off of Sandy Lane.
Yeah.
And
I noticed that it was reopened.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. And I got them around $3 million or so to get that reopened through what we call congressionally directed spending. People on the news, you hear that as earmarks, but that's the actual technical name is congressionally directed spending.
Okay.
And so I got congressionally directed spending to get that open. But again, that was the YMCA and some of their board members coming to me and asking for help. It wasn't me dictating to the YMCA on what they do. And so in this role that I have, I try to be like a stakeholder and a partner with, whether it's nonprofits, whether it's the city, whether it's the county or the state, on making sure that we get things done. And that's truly how you keep government harmonious. What Trump is doing right now, where he is just imposing the government onto local municipalities, is really not good. And even in the past, when it's been done for something really positive, obviously what Trump is doing it for is very negative. But even in the past, when it's been done for something positive to help make America better, there's oftentimes been resistance in those areas. And so you just want to make sure that whenever you do something like that, that the stakeholders and the other local community partners are on board.
Okay.
Yeah.
You brought his name up, so I guess we'll talk about him a little bit.
Yeah.
There was a peace summit in Alaska.
Yeah.
And the peace summit involved President Putin and President Trump.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And when President Putin returned to Russia, there was no peace.
There was no peace, yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, no, Trump got played like a fiddle. Like that's the bottom line. And I know that people will hear me say things like that, but I just want to be politically incorrect and 100% straight with you, man. Like, Trump literally got played like a fiddle. Putin was the person that benefited from that meeting the most, because it normalized him, right? Like, instead of making him someone that has invaded Ukraine unlawfully and has kidnapped kids and not returned them to their families, so he can try to indoctrinate them and make them, into Russians. What it did for Putin was elevate his normalcy, and that's really sad that Trump allowed Putin to do that on U.S. soil. That's terrible that he allowed for Putin to do that on U.S. soil, because now Putin can say that his credibility has been raised around the world, has been raised and elevated throughout Europe, and it definitely gives him an advantage. I still don't think that he's going to be able to take over Ukraine anytime soon, but it certainly gave him encouragement and made things over there even worse.
Where do you see this thing going?
I think it's going to go on for quite some time until Putin, either waves the white flag or can come up with some sort of an off ramp. Okay. If something comes along that's significant enough and more important, where he can give himself an excuse and save face, then I think that he'll take the off ramp. But there has to be some sort of vehicle that allows him to be able to leave this without being disgraced too much, because I don't think that he wants to go down in history as someone that led Russia through, what was a disaster during Afghanistan, and he doesn't want to be seen in that light. He wants to be seen in the pantheon of Russian leaders that were considered, tremendous, like Peter the Great and other leaders like that.
I have a woman that works with me, and she's from Russia.
Yeah.
She's been an American citizen for some time now, but her mother and a few of her aunts and uncles are still in Russia.
Yeah.
And she told me the other day that they were suffering tremendously, economic wise, because of certain sanctions.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are.
Have there been enough sanctions levied against Russia, or do you think that there should be more?
I think there needs to be more sanctions levied against Russia. I always like to warn people too that when there are sanctions that are levied, oftentimes that can mean that we have to make sacrifices here too. And remember, America is not like it was before World War II. We live in a very integrated global economy. And we like to live in that global economy because it keeps things at places like Walmart relatively inexpensive. And once you start trying to produce everything here, again, like this is the 1930s or something, we will pay significantly more than that, and people won't like that, including petroleum that we use to put in our vehicles every day. And so Russia is one of the world's largest producers of oil. And so if you get into trade wars with them, or if you put additional sanctions on them, it could certainly mean that we would pay higher prices at the pump.
Okay. You mentioned trade war. We're going to use that as a segue to our next topic. Which are tariffs. According to Google, the United States has generated upwards of $165 billion in tariff revenue. How do you feel about the tariffs as a whole?
No, we pay more for everything. It can be small products, it can be large products. The product that I like to use the most, and I think is fitting today since we're in Stop 6, is I'm going to take General Motors, right? Let's take General Motors. A lot of people in Stop 6 over the years have earned their money, have paid their mortgage, have paid their rent, their car note, sent their kids to college because they worked at that plant in Arlington, Texas.
Yes,
one of my cousins that live over here off of Truman Drive, his grandfather worked there for a number of years. And so let's use that as an example. So they don't make the entire car in Arlington. A lot of people think they do. The people that work there know that they don't, but a lot of people in town think they make that entire car there. They don't. In order to make that car, and I'll use the Escalade, which we're going to lose next year. They're actually shipping the Escalade production up to Michigan, but I'll still use the Escalade as an example. The Escalade right now, made in Arlington, Texas, they get parts from Mexico, right? And they get parts from Canada. As a matter of fact, the engine comes from the St. Catharines propulsion plant on the Niagara Falls side of Canada. And so because of our North American Free Trade Agreement, and Trump renegotiated it, but because when he was president the first time around, but because of Bill Clinton and that agreement that was drafted, in order to keep that car affordable and to have these different trade partners play a role in this, we get parts from Canada and we get parts from Mexico. If you put tariffs on things that are coming out of those, it's got to make a car that's already a pretty nice price, right? The Escalade, I think we'd agree that you're going to pay a little money for that Escalade, right? It is going to make it to where the parts that are coming from China, the parts that are coming from Mexico and Canada, before that car comes to Arlington, Texas for final assembly, the prices have to be passed off to the consumer, and that's why Trump was threatening General Motors and other companies, saying we want y'all to eat the cost. But that's not how business works. Costs are passed down to eventually to customers. And
drive the price of the vehicle.
Exactly. And so that's how we're all going to pay higher prices for all these things. And it's things that you've never thought about. It can be clothing. It can be the beer that we drink. It can be a lot of different things. I was reading a story about this brewer in the Northeast that actually gets all of their bottle tops from Canada.
Okay.
in order to fasten the beer inside of the bottle. You pay everyone will pay more because of these tariffs, and they are because they're a form of the tax.
Yeah.
They are Trump tariff taxes, and that is why we're seeing a slowdown in the U.S. economy right now. That is the number one and main reason why.
In your opinion, are tariffs necessary at all?
I think the tariffs can be used effectively without the American consumer feeling any sort of a pinch. I think the way that Trump is using them is reckless because businesses don't know how to price, because one day he's going to do 25%, the next day is 17%, another time it's 50%, and so businesses can't plan for that. Businesses need to plan things out long term,
Yes, sir.
right? Like if you have Rodney's Hamburgers and you get your ground beef from a place that you want to make sure that it's being priced the same way, because your customers expect that when they come into Rodney's Hamburgers that they're going to pay $9.99 for a hamburger every time they come in. And so all of a sudden, if you're paying 25% more, and then the next month you're paying 50% more, and then the next month it's the tariffs been reduced and you're paying 17% more for that beef, whatever it happens to be, you can't price that effectively, and then your customers aren't going to understand that. They're just going to say, why does Rodney keep going up and down on his prices, right? And so that is what Trump is doing, and that's what makes the tariffs very ineffective, and long term will make them unpopular. They're unpopular right now. The way how you could use the tariffs effectively is to get China to behave better.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that China dumps a bunch of cheap stuff here in this country. They steal a lot of intellectual property from the United States. I mean, they literally stole an entire jet from the way it was wired on the inside, the dimensions, the seat sizes, everything from Boeing. And that's that sort of thing is unacceptable.
Yeah.
And so there are ways to get them to and compel them to do the right thing without getting into these tariffs. And then for him to do it to our closest European allies that really helped us stop the spread of communism right after World War II and help keep Europe in relative peace and prosperity for so many decades, and for him to turn his back against them, that just makes no sense at all. Yeah.
You said Rodney's Hamburgers, those would be the Positive Postman's hamburgers.
The Positive Postman's hamburgers, yeah. I love it.
You worked as a substitute teacher and sports writer, as well as writing scripts for an advertising agency.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So when I got I wanted to be a political reporter when I graduated from Texas Wesleyan. Okay. And I ended up staying here in Fort Worth because I had the opportunity to be a long-term substitute teacher at Poly High School, which was great because you get double the pay, and you get to be in one place. And so I taught reading at Poly, and so I was not a certified teacher. I was literally a long-term sub, and had a great time. Still run into some of the people that I used to work with, and run into some of the kids that I used to teach, and really, learned a lot, and enjoyed doing that. And after I left there, I went to work for an advertising agency in Las Colinas, where I used to write scripts for them. And I had a part-time job at the Star Telegram doing 3A football and below, and girls volleyball, and really had a good time doing that. And then when football and volleyball season ended, I would take a hiatus from the Star Telegram, and I started volunteering for Martin Frost, who was a congressman that represented this area. He was a Fort Worth guy, also graduated from Pascal High School back in 1960, and I started working for him and volunteering on his campaign, and then I got hired in his official office, and that was really what sort of set me off in the path to where I find myself today.
Okay. I saw that Martin Frost lost his congressional seat to Pete Sessions because of redistricting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Now, we're seeing redistricting right now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Talk about the redistricting now and how it's going to affect state politicians or even national politics.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that it's ironic for me because redistricting has played such a big role in my political career. One of the reasons why I left Martin's office and ran for office in the state legislature is that his career was ending in the U.S. House of Representatives. And then I thought I was actually running for re-election in the state house because the Republicans had passed a map that had basically broken up Southeast Forward into a bunch of different areas. And so I didn't think that I'd be able to run for Congress. And at the last minute, a court came in and invalidated the map that they passed in the state legislature. And I ran for Congress and won in 2012. And then, of course, today, with the mid-decade redistricting happened, which ironically, I worked for Martin Frost, and I find myself in the same situation to where Republicans are drawing me out of my district and trying to put me in a district that stretches out to Aledo. And again, like the court system saved the African American community in Fort Worth back then, I think it's going to save us again today because Republicans blatantly violated the Voting Rights Act. So I keep finding myself, on the same hamster wheel. And it really is fascinating. But were the maps allowed to go through, it would be terrible. How often do you see Phil King here? Exactly. Yeah, and he knows these streets because Phil was the. You don't even know who he is. Yeah, you don't even know who Phil King is. Well, Phil King is the state senator for this area, and of course he doesn't come around because all of his votes come out of Parker County. That's the same thing that they're trying to do now. That's the same thing that they're trying to do now.
So, Governor Abbott signed into law the bill that he signed into law the other day. Were the lines redrawn?
Yeah, the lines were redrawn. Yeah,
and who was affected?
I was impacted. Like I said, my district, instead of it stretching between Tarrant and Dallas, it was pushed entirely in Dallas. And now they have this entire area, almost kind of like Phil King's state Senate district. They basically connected us in a district that goes all the way up to Abilene. So they basically have pitted Southeast Fort Worth, which is a smaller area, against Aledo and counties going all the way up to Abilene. Yeah, in order that way they can dilute the black vote. So
you no longer have this particular area in your jurisdiction?
If the map is upheld after 2020, January 3rd, 2027, no, this area would be in a very Republican district going up to all the way up to Abilene. Yeah. But that's what they do. That's what they did to us in the 50s and before the Voting Rights Act passed in 1965, and that's what they're trying to do to us now. And like you said, that's funny that you don't even know Phil. He was the captain, and he was over this jurisdiction. Phil was over this jurisdiction, so he knows these streets. He grew up in Eastern Hills, went to graduate from Eastern Hills High School, grew up in Handley, and but doesn't spend any time over here because he doesn't have to. He doesn't get any votes out of here, right? So, like that's how they get us. That is how they get us, and that's how they discriminate against us, and that's how they discriminated us against in the past, and that's what they're trying to do to us now.
Now, when you deported from the State House in 2012, you were preceded by Nicole Collier.
Yeah, that's right.
And she was recently locked in the Senate chambers.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah. For her standing up to themselves, because like if you go back to Antebellum South, you go back to the Civil Rights Movement in the 1950s and 60s, one of the things that people that were in charge would do to black constituencies would punish them for standing up to themselves, right? To make an example of them. Obviously, if you go back to the 1800s, those examples were more harsh. But they were still pretty harsh going into the 1950s. A lot of people don't know during the Montgomery bus boycott, for instance, for people what a lot of the white citizens that were in charge of things back then would say is that you were being too uppity by standing up to yourself. And so one of the things they did is that they tried to punish people that actually helped people get to work that participated in the Montgomery boycott. So if they find that someone was actually transporting people in their cars, like if there was someone black that was transporting people in their vehicles to their jobs, they could lose their job as well by helping the boycott be more successful. And it was a way to, quote unquote, put people in their place. And so one of the ways that the speaker was wanting to put people in their place is the Black and Hispanic state legislators that went to Illinois, which is a tactic that is used in certain state legislatures. In order to put them in their place, they told them that, and I'm not making any of this up at all, because this is going to sound like something from like the antebellum South, but I swear I'm not making this up. They had to sign a permission slip, and they had to agree to have an escort that the speaker deemed suitable, which was what I think was the law. I think it was DPS, to like go with them everywhere to make sure that they didn't try to leave again. So, which sounds disgustingly antebellum and racist, because it is. And so Nicole was like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not signing a permission slip like you own me.
So they tried to bully her into.
Yeah, and they wouldn't even let her go home to get clean clothes.
So what was the end result?
After they passed the map, they lifted it, but it was terrible that they did that. But it's also, I think, why things like Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and why we need to bring Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act back is that I don't think that any of those guys think of themselves as racist or think of themselves as terrible people. But the fact that they would do something like what they did to her and did to those state legislators by having them have to have like some sort of an overseer to follow them around different places is, I don't think that they knew better. When we try to educate our friends that are more conservative than we are about systemic racism and about how sometimes you're doing things and don't even realize that you're doing things that are terrible or racist or sexist or whatever it may happen to be. That's why we have to have these discussions. They're not discussions of what they like to call wokeness. They're not discussions of that. They are discussion so you can see that, hey man, you're literally emulating behavior that people marched against, and you don't realize that you're doing the same thing that the person that stood in your position back in the 1950s were doing when they wanted to punish people for being uppity in the Montgomery bus boycott, or that they wanted to punish people for being uppity, for looking someone that was running a slave labor camp into the face. Like, it's crazy that people can't see that. And it's important that we have these discussions around race and things like that, and that we bring the Voting Rights Act back, because people can't help themselves. People absolutely can, oftentimes don't realize how they are behaving. And sometimes they do realize how they're behaving, and they just want to put people in their place, which I truly believe that was all about. That they were like, we're going to show them, these uppity people, about what they are supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do, by vetting out extreme, punishment. Okay. Yeah, and it's terrible. It's grossly and very intentionally discriminatory, just like the maps, the way they were redrawn were.
Speaking of reckless behavior, Charlie Kirk.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah. First of all, that was terrible what happened to him. It truly, and I was really upset that they even allowed it on mainstream social media networks showing the actual assassination. I thought that in and of itself was disgusting.
That's where we are now.
And that's where we are now. Yeah. Was definitely not a fan of Charlie Kirk and found a lot of things that he said offensive. But that was that was just unjust, and I hope that the person that did it is punished to the fullest extent of the law, man. That's not right. What I'm trying to do is get people, and even people on my side that vote like me and think like me, we need to start having discussions on free speech. And free speech means a lot, right? And a friend of mine that I went to high school with, that's a conservative, he actually made me kind of think about that a little bit, because free speech can mean a lot of different things. There's free speech that the Constitution is clearly addressing, and that is governmental free speech, right? Like the government and how they regulate free speech. We don't want the government regulating free speech. We had an incident here. Tim O'Hare, who's the Republican county judge, he had art confiscated from the Kimball Museum, or the Modern Art Museum in Fort Worth, that he found highly offensive, right? And we don't want the government or people that represent the government saying, hey, this is offensive and I want this taken down. We've seen that before, right? When back in the South, when people that own restaurants and things like that, they could have their restaurants closed down if they played what they called race mixing music on jukeboxes inside of their restaurant. So, we've seen that before in America. We don't want to go back to a time and period where people are doing that again. And so that's the government participating in censorship, which I'm very worried about. The other thing that I'm worried about too is our personal censorship, right? Like, which we actually have the right to regulate. Like, if you don't want someone on your page espousing different views that you don't believe in, you have the right to delete that. You have the right to not friend them, and you have the right to you basically have the right to regulate your own page how you want to as a private citizen. I think that that after seeing what happened with Charlie Kirk, is that we have to think as individual citizens how much we are going to appreciate free speech and free expression in our own personal everyday lives. Because I do think that it can be just as dangerous as the government regulating free speech if we try to over-regulate each other's free speech and try to censor out things that we find personally offensive. I can point out a lot of examples on the other side. Charlie Kirk is an example, even though it was his own people that it looked like ended up assassinating him. I can point out things on my side where people have wanted to get people fired from their jobs and wanted people to, and different things like that. And I can point to oversensitivities on their side, on the Republican side and the conservative side, where they try to create a safe space and they try to take America back to the time, and they want to over-censor their friends and neighbors, church members, etc., that don't think like them. And so I do think that living in a society that have people with a lot of different viewpoints, a lot of different races, a lot of different demographics, I think that is very dangerous if we're going to live in a society to where anytime you put something on Facebook or anytime you put something out on the internet, someone may want to get you fired or may want to get you canceled because they don't agree with your viewpoint. And I think it's scary on the governmental end, but I also think it's scary on a person-to-person end too. So yeah, I think that we have to respect each other's differences. There's this guy that I know that recently was telling someone that he moved further west and he moved out of Fort Worth because he wanted to live around people that thought and think just like he did. He didn't want to live around people that think differently than he did anymore. And I just thought that, man, I was like, I get that. I think that I've even said that in the past. But when I saw him saying that, I was like, this is not healthy anymore. Yeah, because we have to be able to accept each other's differences. And oftentimes that means even when those differences and those views are grotesquely opposite of what we believe in.
Two-part question.
Yeah.
Do you feel safe? And has there ever been a time where you felt unsafe?
I've never felt more unsafe than now. Yeah. Just because some of the things that I have seen on X and some of the things that I have seen on social media leads me to believe that some lunatic is going to get revenge. Even though this kid came from a MAGA household and learned how to hunt and use ARs and different things like that, came from Utah, which is a state that's redder than Texas. And this kid seemingly came from a very MAGA background. I know that there are going to be people that are going to want to get revenge on the against people that they consider left, or just so they can receive the same level of attention that this lunatic did that killed Kurt. And so you could tell that there was, when we left the House of Representatives, you could tell that people were concerned for their safety on the on the Republican and Democratic side of the aisle. So it's not just Democrats that are concerned; it's everybody that's concerned. I was concerned after the Minnesota because they didn't know where that guy had went. Remember, it took them 48 hours to find him, and so I was really worried then. But now I'm very, very worried. And on January the 6th. I was very concerned during that time period, but I also think that I was relieved knowing that, in a couple of weeks that Trump would be home. So there was also there was light at the end of the tunnel. And so there wasn't as much anxiety as there is now. With Trump, we have another 3.5 years to go, man. I mean, we're still in the very infancy of the madness that Trump has created in this country.
Take me back into the congressional halls on January 6th.
Yeah. It was crazy. So remember, we were
the people back then.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And remember, we were still under COVID protocols back then. Mm-hmm. And so they asked us not to come to the House tour. We had some members that did go on the House tour. They wanted to watch it because they knew it was going to be historic. I stayed back in the Navy Yard, which is where I live when I'm in D.C. Mm-hmm. And I stayed back. And I was just like, no, I'm not going. I wasn't going to go in because I saw this woman, this MAGA woman, curse out a police officer January 5th when we were leaving the Capitol. And she said that he didn't hold the crosswalk. They can control the walk and do not walk signs. They can control the crosswalks. The Capitol Police can. And this MAGA woman went off on this police officer. They always like to talk about how they are pro-police, hashtag black the blue this and black the blue that. Like that's one of the feathers that they stick in their hat to try to sort of have moral superiority over people that they don't agree with, is that they are 100% pro-police. And man, she cursed this police officer. The police officer was a white guy just like her, just like she was white. She cursed that police officer up and down. And I remember something that my mom told me when I was a kid. And she said, if something doesn't feel right, trust your instincts and leave. That's something that even now as a 50-something, year old man, that I keep with me and that I've always carried in my back pocket, because your situational awareness will actually protect you more than any weapon or any gun will. Is your situational awareness and knowing where and what situations to put yourself in, where you should be and shouldn't be, which is something we need to teach our kids more about.
So was it your situational?
It was my situational awareness. Yeah.
Away from
and so I was like, on January 6th, I said, I'm going to go to the Capitol when they tell us to come up.
Okay. I'm
not going to go there and try to witness history. Nancy, Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, told us, because we're under COVID protocol, that we didn't need to have the gallery filled and that we didn't need to be there unless you absolutely worked on the bill. Some people didn't win anyway, and they found themselves having to wear gas masks and different things like that. So I wasn't there when all that happened, and glad that I was not, to be quite honest with you. But the reason why I did not go was because there were some of them that were acting a fool January 5th. And then when I found out that they had placed pipe bombs, that these MAGA extremists had placed pipe bombs that literally would have killed people and shredded people to bits at the Democratic National Committee, where I spend a lot of time, and at the Republican Club, I was like, these folks are crazy. And I was just so grateful that I remember that lesson that my mom taught me and didn't go, because it was crazy. But when I went back up there, I went back up to the Capitol, and it was like a war zone. It was crazy. I walked back up there because they had so many different checkpoints. It didn't make any sense to try to drive because they had so many different checkpoints set up with military vehicles and things like that. So I walked back, and I had to use my ID to get through the checkpoints. And I was thinking to myself, what if some of these people recognized me, and so I put on my coat, so I didn't have my pen and my jacket showing, and I walked back up to the Capitol that night. And you can't have any kind of, DC is very strict about weapons and things like that, so you can't have any sort of personal safety on your belongings. And
So
I
you
just
felt the need to hide.
I did stick something in my pocket. It wasn't an illegal weapon, but I did stick something in my pocket. I said, just in case I got to fight, I got to have something that can protect me. But it wasn't
That's that
illegal.
hood kicking
Oh,
in.
yeah. But illegal though. But I did have,
Yeah.
I did stick something in my pocket.
Okay.
And I said, because if they jump me, I'm gonna need to be able to fight back.
Yes, sir.
You know.
Yes, sir.
And luckily it was quiet and the streets were clear. But I was so happy when I went up there and we certified that election, and I was really proud that a Democratic speaker, Nancy Pelosi, led the charge to make sure that we did at that night to send a message that we were not going to let the peaceful transfer of power that happens in this country every 4 or 8 years. We were not going to let those crazy asses disrupt that, because that's what they wanted to do. That's why they were trying to kidnap the vice president. You know, that's why a retired colonel in Grapevine, literally a retired colonel in Grapevine, Texas, Air Force colonel, was on the Senate floor in a rubber helmet. They were looking to kidnap Mike Pence. And so I'm glad that she did what she did, and I was proud to cast that vote that day. And again, I worry more now than anything else, because I don't think that the people in charge are really going to try to quell any of this, just because so much of their electoral success really depends on this outrage machine, this media outrage machine that's on Fox, and that Charlie Kirk was a part of, that other similar podcasts are a part of. It really deals with pitting people against one another. And if that's how people are feeding their family, and if that's how people are paying their bills, and somebody like Sean Hannity, for instance, he got some serious bills to pay. Good luck trying to get someone like that is how they are putting food on their table. Good luck trying to get them to calm it down a little bit. We have to have real political leadership in this country that is going to calm us and get us through this period that we're in right now. And it's not going to happen instantly. I wish it could. I wish that we could just snap our fingers and have it happen instantly, but it's not, though, because there is an entire lucrative industry that is literally centered around us being at each other's throats. Yeah.
Chicago.
Yeah.
Last 5 years, near 4,000 homicides.
Yeah.
Dallas, 600 or 700. Fort Worth, 400.
Mm-hmm.
Houston, 7 or 8.
Yeah.
What is the solution, if not the National Guard,
Mm-hmm.
in the city of Chicago? What is the solution?
There's no instant solution, and I'll tell you, even in D.C., they have the Guard in selective areas so Trump can make a media spectacle out of it, and it can be part of his show and part of what he's trying to project, part of this outrage machine that I talked about. Because in some of the areas, some parts of D.C. that are very high crime, they don't have anybody there. So they have them in these more touristy area, these more high-profile areas, and they're not doing anything to protect people there. So think about that for a second. The other thing that I will tell you is that if you really want to do something about crime in a place like D.C., the D.C. police, they're understaffed and under-resourced. They need more resources. We need to, as Congress, we need to appropriate more money, because we're in charge of DC's money. We need to appropriate more money to DC so they can hire more people to do things like be on horseback. I've never seen one DC police officer on horseback. They don't have the money. You know what I mean? Like they need more money to have a better presence throughout the city and throughout the metro system and different things like that. But does it warrant the Guard being there? No. My family comes to DC. I feel fine with my son and wife going different places on their own while we're in DC when they come up.
Okay.
So
you do or you
I
don't?
do. I do.
Okay.
Yeah. So it doesn't warrant that. in these cities where you see this crime, you have to address the root problems of the crime, or it's not going to do anything. The crime's just going to come back when the guard leaves. And we don't want the militarization of our U.S. streets. And so I would tell you, and some people don't like it. There's people on both sides that don't like what I say when I say this. There are three things that have to happen. We have to rebuild family in this country. We have to have strong schools. Right now, our school system is being dismantled. The Republicans are literally dismantling our school system and having students sent out to segregation-style academies with vouchers and low underperforming charter schools that don't have the same resources and facilities as public schools do. And you have to rebuild neighborhood. And neighborhood includes strengthening our churches, strengthening the safety in our neighborhoods, and making neighborhoods where people will stay long term. My grandmother moved into the house. That was the second place they lived when they left Marshall. And once she was there, like they were there until she died on Rickenbacker and Lucas. Same with my grandmother in Como, with my grandfather. Like that's literally where they were. We sold, when my grandmother died, we sold her house over here in Stop 6. I still have relatives that live in my grandmother's house in Como. So a healthy neighborhood is one where people don't move all the time.
Okay.
You know, and I thank God for the blessings that I have, because I was one of those kids that, despite having sedentary grandparents that stayed in one place, I moved around a lot. And I know that I'm not supposed to be where I am right now, and have had the experiences being on Air Force One and things like that I've been able to do because I was one of those people that bounced around a bunch of different schools and different things like that before my parents finally got divorced, and we were in my grandparents' house in Como. So a healthy community is one in which a certain percentage of the people that live there value that community, and a certain percentage of the people decide they're going to live there for a certain amount of time and make that home. Once it becomes a place where people are going from house to house and apartment to apartment, like I did, then you're destabilizing that neighborhood, and you're making it a lot less likely that kid's going to succeed. And so I'll tell you, one of the things that where we have failed as a community, and I've failed as an elected official, and other elected officials have failed that no one is talking about,
right,
is that when are we going to get back to believing that people that are low income in this country and people that are poor in this country can have family? And we've moved away from that, because what's happening right now is that we've just decided that they need a Section 8 voucher, and they need an apartment that doesn't provide them with that same sort of stability that my poor grandparents had, having their kids be in one place the entire time that they were growing up, right? And so we have to really believe that poor people can succeed, that poor people can have a family, can have a cohesive family, and get them the help and resources that they need. Instead of investing so much money in jails, let's put some more money into rehab. Let's put some more money into mental health. Let's figure out why people are not keeping their families together, why they're moving around, why they're doing things like that, and get people back into churches, get people back into neighborhood clubs. You know, neighborhood clubs across all demographic lines are shrinking. Well, you know, the Lions clubs, the Elks, whatever it may happen to be, the Heroines of Jericho, Eastern Star, whatever it may happen to be, like all those organizations are shrinking.
Yeah.
And it's part of the reason why is because people are moving around so much. We have to figure out like how we are going to have success for all families. It can't just be African American families that are earning at the top income or have gotten college degrees. We need to believe that everybody in this country can succeed and have stability in their life, even if they happen to be low income.
Okay. illegal immigration
Yeah.
or ICE.
Yeah.
The argument on the other side is because of the deportation.
Yeah.
Or due to the deportation,
Yeah.
the streets will be safer.
No.
What say you?
No. The statistics show that people here that are undocumented are some of the least violent people in the entire country. And not only that, they are taking a lot of jobs and performing a lot of jobs that most people don't want. I've never had anybody tell me, hey, I want to get on, can you help me get on in the feedlots up in Amarillo? Like, no, I've never had anybody ask me that. I've had people ask me how they can get into the oil and gas industry, but I've never had people ask me how they can get some of the more dangerous jobs in the oil and gas industry that are being performed by the undocumented. Ask them how they can get any of those. They ask them how they can get a job driving a frac truck.
Yeah.
But I've never had anybody ask me how they can get one of the more dangerous jobs that are out there fracking that well, right? Where they have to be at multiple stories and people get hurt and things like that. They're in the sun. If just like the tariffs, and I like to be 100% blunt with people, just like the tariffs, if you were to remove that many people from our country, particularly here in Dallas-Fort Worth and Texas, from the country at one time, like Trump is doing right now, it will drive a hole in the economy. And that's one of the reasons why you're starting, along with the Trump tariff taxes, you're seeing the economy slow down. Because think about that. They spend money in the community. You can go, there are different retail places, there are different restaurants, and you can go in there and you can meet families that are undocumented. You can see it. And all of a sudden they're not going to be there. And I had this one guy that owns a restaurant. There was a big apartment complex that was being built in my district in Dallas, and he said, this was right after Trump started doing all those raids. This was back like in February, and he said, these guys left all this equipment out here, and they haven't been back in 2 weeks, and they were spending a lot of money with me, these construction workers. And he said they haven't been back in 2 weeks. He goes, I don't know what's going to happen. So he was someone that was an American citizen that was saying that because these guys were run off. Yeah. So it's a complicated situation. What we need to do is obviously pass a comprehensive bill, work on securing our border, and fix our broken system.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And there's a responsible way how to do that, and there's an irresponsible way how to do it. Trump is doing it the irresponsible way, and just like the Trump tariff taxes, we literally are all going to pay. Yeah.
You went against President Biden in 2021 when he canceled the Keystone pipeline.
Yeah.
Now, what that says to me is you have allies or friends on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
I mean, I do, but not necessarily. Like I believe in energy security.
Okay.
I believe that energy security is very important. We fought wars over energy security and being able to have, and countries have fought wars over being able to have enough energy to adequately provide, and we're not at anywhere near to where we can affordably and reliably live 100% on wind and solar.
Okay.
We're not anywhere near that. We're going to need natural gas, we're going to need oil, we're going to need nuclear energy, especially nuclear energy, in order to be able to get us to where we need to be and have cleaner air and cleaner water to breathe. And we also need to continue to invest for cleaner air and cleaner water in our solar and wind and other renewable industries. And the Keystone Pipeline was basically just sort of a marker aligned in the sand to just sort of show people what side of the aisle they were on this issue. I don't think it had anything to necessarily do with that pipeline. Those pipelines are much safer than moving hydrocarbons through other means.
Okay.
Those pipelines today have sensors on them so you can see where leaks are happening, and it's just really a tragedy. And there was one individual in the oil and gas industry that was the owner of the pipeline that really made that situation a lot worse than it had to be, because there were some of the tribes actually wanted the pipeline to be laid.
Yeah. And that also provided lots of jobs.
A lot of jobs, yeah, a lot of jobs. And Democrats, really, we're going to have to learn how we can start communicating effectively with blue collar workers again. We're losing blue collar workers. and we have to figure out how we can effectively communicate with blue-collar workers. And it's hard to do that if you're going to be against all other jobs. So we have our work cut out for us on that.
Why do you think Kamala Harris lost the election?
She wasn't given enough time. Yeah, I think that had she been given enough time, that she would have won. My personal belief is that the American public, anytime they see something different, it creates a level of anxiety. And we had never had a nominee before that didn't really go through the entire vetting process in the public and go through the nomination process. And I think that worried a lot of people. And then I think that there was just some sexism. I know guys here, probably guys that me and you know, that have lived in this community that were like, they either told me they weren't voting or they didn't feel comfortable enough voting for her. None of them came right and said it was because she was a woman, but I can read between the lines. Yeah, you know what I mean? And there was definitely some of that too. So I don't want to try to downplay that, but I mostly think it was really because of the abbreviated time period in which she was given to show her skills. Yeah.
So what's next for you?
We'll see what happens. Well, you know, we're fighting this redistricting, and so we'll see what happens. It's hard to predict the future, but I feel pretty bright about the future.
Okay. Before we get out of here, we're gonna talk a little sports.
Yeah.
Dallas Cowboys.
They won't be good this year. Yeah, Micah's gone. They may be able to do something with these 2 first-round draft picks, but Micah is gone, and Jerry continues to be the general manager, and that's really unfortunate. But I don't think we're going to do anything this season at all. But I think it's going to be a long
playoffs?
season. I don't think. I'd be very shocked if they make the playoffs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you have anything else that you want to say before we shut it down?
No, I don't.
A message you want to relay to the general public?
No, I can't think of anything. I would just let the general public know to please vote. That's really what makes the difference. Being able to stop someone like Trump, please get out there and vote, especially in these midterms. Don't be one of these people that just vote for president and not come out and vote. We have a very important Senate race coming up. I'm supporting Colin Alder for the Democratic nomination again. Not only do we have this important Senate race, we have many other races up and down the ballot. We need to replace Tim O'Hare, who's the county judge. So please make sure that you get out and vote, and not just during the midterm and the presidential, but for a city council, for a water board, whatever it may happen to be, TCC. Make sure you get out there and vote.
Because I am a federal government worker, I want to give a disclaimer to let the general public know that I am not a participant of either party. And I am independent of both parties, but I like to speak with members of both parties so they can give their opinion and keep you informed.
Yeah, which is important to hear from people from both sides.
So with that being said, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for having me on.
And you're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
You gonna come back?
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
U.S. Congressman Marc Veasey and a Positive Postman, and we out. Peace.